Okay. Okay, we're live. Let me just make sure everything works this time. I should be on the right setting. I should be seeing everything coming in as is. All right. According to this, it works. According to this, it's online but offline. You got the internet? I got the internet now. Yeah. Okay, I'm up. Good. So for those of you who come into this late, this is the 21st of the month. I had a show last night. I was having technical difficulties in the beginning. I finally got up and running, got 40 minutes into it before I realized that YouTube had changed my stream key. So I was broadcasting into the ether and had absolutely no idea what the hell was going on. Was not happy about that. Was not happy about that at all. All right, good. Well, looks like we're up. Yeah. You want to call it a boomer? Fine. I call it. I would argue not necessarily my fault because it didn't give me any indication. But then again, I also was entirely too caught up in the moment, too caught up in it to really, dive in, I guess, to pay attention. I was so excited to give you guys the news. That I didn't see it. And then by the time I figured it out, I was already I was so pissed. I talked for 20 minutes and then I decided, I'm done. I'll be in the Discord. If you want to come talk to me in there, I'll be in there. By the way, I have a Discord. I do. I don't know if it doesn't have the same name anymore, right? We're getting a new link for it. But we did change it up now. It's no longer the Mundane Matt Discord. It's $3 Theater Discord, complete with this little guy, this little logo right here. So as for the formatting of the show tonight, what I was doing last night was I had put out a call for questions. I got a bunch of questions, and then today not so much. So I don't want to rely heavily on that. I thought that would be pretty cool to get the questions, people sending in stuff like that. But I got submissions. But I didn't get a lot of questions along with it. It was more just, have you seen this? It's, okay, fine. That's great. I appreciate it. I got one today. A guy sent me the first episode of a web series he's doing called Pussy High. I watched the first couple minutes of it and it is atrociously terrible, but also remarkably intriguing. I need to go back and finish watching it. So there's that. All right. Thanks a lot for posting it, Curtis. Keep it up on there. So tonight, again, formatting as this show grows, as I do more with it, I definitely want to have a bit more fun. Let me just get a quick drink of water because it's thirsty. There we go. Nope, nothing on me. I'm good. Didn't mess it up. So there is a fair amount to talk about tonight. Once again, 6 stories. And the 2 that I had postponed from last night didn't even make it in today. And then even something else dropped right as I was getting ready to go live on this son of a bitch. And I'll talk about that tomorrow. Because that's just the way that the cookie crumbles when it comes to doing a show like this. Is it's always a lot going on. And that's great. I'm very happy to do it. So let me just let me double check something here before I jump over to the next one here. All right. Well, that's not going to work. So we're going to see we're going to see if this works here. Okay. There we go. All right. Again, I was really worried I didn't have the right programming put up for this one. So, as you guys saw in the thumbnail for the podcast tonight, Stephen King's The Long Walk has now been ordered by New Line. And this is pretty cool considering the fact that this book is Stephen King's very first novel that is now getting a feature film adaptation for New Line. This isn't like a Netflix adaptation or a Hulu adaptation, of which there have been quite a few for both programs, right? For on Hulu, you had 11/22 or 2360 or 11/22/63, which was an 8-episode miniseries about James Franco going back in time and trying to stop Kennedy from being assassinated, which if you've read the books, you probably didn't care much for the miniseries. I never read the book, love the miniseries. And then Netflix has got a bunch of content as well. But this is going to be for New Line, who also is putting out It. So this is Warner Brothers once again trying to back Stephen King in a way that's going to be very profitable for them. So here's what we're dealing with here. It says here, exclusive. Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark director Andre Overdahl. Now, if you've seen the trailer for Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, you know that this dude can make some horror stuff, right? Now, he's set to direct New Line's feature adaptation of Stephen King's The Long Walk, originally published by King under the pseudonym Richard Bachman in 1979. The Long Walk takes place in a future in which 100 teenage boys embark on an annual competition known as The Long Walk. Now, pay attention to the rules of The Long Walk and see if it ties into maybe anything else that has come out from Richard Bachman specifically. The rules are simple. Maintain a speed above 4 miles an hour, receive 3 warnings in an hour, and you're shot dead. The last one walking gets whatever he wants for the rest of his life. Under these grim circumstances, the boys develop deep friendships, despite knowing that each of their friends' survival is a threat to their own. Kind of sounds like the Hunger Games and Battle Royale and The Condemned and now even the Running Man. There's actually a lot in this story. I read the plot outline today on Wikipedia in preparation for tonight, and I was like, this sounds remarkably like The Running Man in many cases. But also Hunger Games plays a bit of it as well. So the novel, since its publication, has become a classic in its dystopian vision, the echoes of which can be found throughout popular culture, like The Hunger Games and The Maze Runner. The book is quintessential King in its coming-of-age themes, zeroing in on the humanity the boys who prevail amid hardship and despair, akin to the protagonists of Stand By Me and It. And yeah, man, like I'm not gonna lie, this is one of those the stories that sounds interesting, because as these boys walk, right, as they walk, it focuses on a 16-year-old named Garrity, who is walking. And he meets all the boys along the way, and some start falling and they're trying to help each other out. But there are kind of things that can be done, right? So you've got the police that are there, the guards that are there, can give them food, water, and other rations, but people who are watching can't try to help out at all, even though that they try to. And it's interesting to see how society watches this thing every single year. And one of the kids that comes in is this kid known as the Rabbit, who was shown this competition when he was younger by his illegitimate father, who happens to be some major player, and so he kind of feels like that's his duty to win so he can officially meet his dad. It's an interesting thing. It does feel like old school Stephen King when describing dystopian futures, right? It really does. It feels like old school Stephen King when trying to make these kind of properties. And I do feel a little bit of Hunger Games, and I feel a little bit of Maze Runner and Battle Royale, and there's always going to be competition in society, right? There's always going to be competition in society. We see this in reality TV shows, elimination challenges. It never, ever, ever goes away, but it is always interesting to see just how exactly, it is portrayed, because we like to see competition. I've always said that if they want to find a way to really deter crime, reopen up the gladiatorial rings, man. That's harsh to say, but it's true. It's really true. People would really like it. It would unite the country probably, because we have a sick desire to watch people get killed. It's just how we are. But no, really, it's like we like watching these kind of stories simply because of the visceral reaction that we feel to them, because deep down it is part of us, like we might have as a society moved past certain aspects of this type of visceral guttural experience, but you can never really take the wolf out of the dog. You know what I mean? And that's kind of what these stories entail. And I'm, for one, I'm very curious to see how it plays out, considering that it's not a horror story. It's a take on a dystopian future, but is the horror and the intensity going to come from as the boys start falling one by one by one by one until there's only one who remains? And that is going to be really where the poignant satirical take on our society comes from. And I am hoping that it is a bit more subtle than perhaps The Hunger Games, which was far more brazen in its approach than quite literally anything else. So, read that headline for a second here. Just kind of read that headline. This popped up today. This popped up a little bit ago as I was prepping for tonight's show. Dan Aykroyd apparently has penned a Ghostbusters 60s prequel. Now, when I first read that, my first thought was these guys are in their 70s, their 60s or 70s, right? Does that mean that he has in fact penned a sequel of them in their 60s? Is this going to be the actual Ghostbusters 3 following up Ghostbusters 2020? Is this where it's going to be? And the answer to that is no, actually it's not. It says here that I've written Ghostbusters High, where they meet in New Jersey in 1969. And we're looking to do that as probably a glorified feature or pilot within maybe the next 5 years. And it would lead to a television project. And I thought of Jason Reitman immediately for that. It's on his desk, but that's years away from the current project. But it's a neat idea for a prequel. Imagine casting 3 characters as teenagers. We have at least 1 or 2 other concepts for the Ghostbusters, and then we'll look at doing a prequel, which will be the perfect button on all that we've done up until that point. Now, if you recall, Dan Aykroyd has talked quite openly about how he wanted to do a Ghostbusters cinematic universe. He mentioned this a couple of years ago, and one of the prospects that he mentioned, one of the project ideas, was Ghostbusters in high school. And at the time, my interpretation of that was he wasn't meaning Venkman and Stantz and Egon inside high school. I thought it was going to be like, we take the Ghostbusters to high school, like the Ghostbusters Club, a group of, Stranger Things meets Ghostbusters, like that kind of thing is what I was interpreting it as. And I'm not against it, because for one, I love Stranger Things and I love Ghostbusters. So there's that. But really, when you think about what he's talking about here, it's going back to 1969 in New Jersey. Venkman, Stantz, and Egon all hanging out in high school. Venkman obviously trying to trick the ladies into getting with him, as he did in the first movie, and Ray and Egon, desperately working on their projects. Now, this could be specifically where they end up learning about ghosts and where they end up, to trying to determine whether or not this stuff exists. However, even though it's coming from Dan Aykroyd, who did create the franchise with Ivan Reitman and Harold Ramis, I do kind of feel like this would be stepping backwards. I don't feel it's necessary. I don't feel a Ghostbusters prequel is something that I would really want to see. I'm not saying I wouldn't watch it, because if it comes out and it's Dan Aykroyd produced or he's involved in any way, yes, I'm going to watch it. 100% going to be there. Like, all right, let's go. Let's do it, right? I'm going to be all ready for that. I'm going to be super happy to see it. But I also realize that it's kind of like not necessary, and I don't want it to be necessary, But he says here also, we have 1 or 2 other concepts for Ghostbusters, and then we'll look at doing the prequel. Now, what are the other 1 and 2 concepts? Is that the Ghostbusters animated movie we heard about a couple years ago that was supposed to come out either this year or 2020? Is that still in the works? There's been no movement on that whatsoever. We do know that there is going to be in just a couple weeks at Ghostbusters Fan Fest in Los Angeles. It's a 2-day event at the Sony lot. And it's like pretty expensive to go. I think it's also kind of sold out. So hopefully out of that, we're going to get a lot of news surrounding Ghostbusters, a lot of news surrounding what's going to be coming down the pipeline, and maybe a peek at just what's going to be going on with Ghostbusters 2020 and get a little bit more information. So in the meantime, I'm really hoping that Aykroyd gives us something good and that we're able to have some stuff to take home, because as far away as we can get from the 2016 reboot and back on track with current Ghostbusters, we're all 100% better off. And I don't think that I'm the only one here to even remotely think that. And we all know it. We all want to forget that movie exists. There's maybe like 20 people who are like, I loved Ghostbusters 2016. No, you don't. No, you don't. You don't like it. You were told to like it. You were lied to. Get on board with the good stuff. Although, then again, I've defended the Game of Thrones series finale quite a bit, and people out there probably would say the same thing to me. So, like what you like, but we can have friendly disagreements. So speaking of this one here, Keanu Reeves wants to make a Constantine sequel. Now, two things. One, yes, please. And two, look at this drawn image of Constantine from this is from a poster. This is from a one sheet for Constantine back 14 years ago in 2005 when this movie came out. It doesn't even look like Keanu Reeves. But that just goes to show you how little DC and Vertigo gave a crap about this movie back in the day. Well, probably more Warner Brothers than the other people, but still, really, they ended up doing it. But anyway, according to Keanu here, excitement was high on Constantine before it hit theaters, which it was in 2005. That was a big lead-in. People really wanted to see it. But that quickly faded away. However, Keanu would like to still come back to the role. Reeves has been talking a lot about past roles over the past few weeks while out promoting John Wick Chapter 3. But Speed 3, unfortunately, is not one because nobody likes Speed 2 and Speed 1 is perfect. But he says here, I've always wanted to play John Constantine again. I just love that world too, and I love that character. I just had a blast playing that character and playing in that world. And yeah, it was fun. Even Shia LaBeouf showing up in the movie as the taxi cab driver was fun. It was before Shia went crazy post Indiana Jones. It was still good Shia. It was good Shia time in Hollywood. But never mind the fact that Peter Stormare was the absolute best interpretation of Satan anyone has ever seen, ever, and since then. And if you ask anyone in who loves movies, well, who was the best person to play Satan ever? What movie was it? You're going to hear Constantine. It was Constantine. Because it was Constantine. It's not even a theory. That's an outright goddamn fact. You can look it up right there. However, there's a couple things that might keep this from happening. One, it's been 14 years. And a lot of people out there are not, 14 years is a long time. But then again, Keanu's riding high with John Wick Chapter 3, and you got Bill and Ted currently in pre-production coming out. So that could be a thing as well. However, let's go take a look here at the box office total. So the box office for Constantine was a $100 million budget, which is in 2005 was pretty good. And it raised 75 million domestic, 154 million international for a worldwide gross of 230 million. Now, the general rule of thumb is a movie has to gross at least 3 times its production budget in order to be profitable. So if it only did $230 million worldwide when it came out in 2005, perhaps the DVD sales was something that could actually kind of help it out. Well, looking over here at the numbers.com, we don't get a lot of information on this one. In fact, there's only 1 week's worth of sales here. Now, this is from November 29th, 2009, where apparently it was ranked 17 and it only shipped 60,000, sold 60,000 units. But that's for Blu-ray sales. There were no DVD sales. So there's no way of knowing how much money Constantine made in the process of coming out on home video. And see, it would have opened up, I think it opened up midsummer. Let's go back here. Take a look here. When it opened. Opened February 18th, 2005. I don't know why I thought summer. So it would have been out on home video by summer 2005. I know I bought it on home video when it came out on summer 2005, but it definitely was one that a lot of people out there, I think, found on home video, and that probably has a bit of a cult following right now. Never mind the fact that the show was really well received, although not a ratings darling, and that actor is now over on Legends of Tomorrow and having voiced the character for a number of DC animated projects. So I think at this point in time, Keanu may want to go back to Constantine, but where the Arrowverse is, where the DC fandom is right now, most likely they're not going to want to do that. They're probably going to end up wanting to go over and have it be the other guy. And honestly, as much as I loved Constantine from 14 years ago and would love to see a sequel to it at some point in time, I probably would also be on the part of seeing the new guy get it rather than Keanu. And I love Keanu, but that ship kind of feels like it's sailed a little bit. You know what I mean? It feels a little bit like it's sailed. So speaking of petitions that would probably never go anywhere, this is real. Thousands of fans really want Danny DeVito as the Wolverine in Disney's MCU, complete with this fan-made image of Danny DeVito rocking the claws with the hair. Now, height-wise, completely makes sense. Height-wise, totally get it, right? You know, considering that Wolverine is short and stumpy in the comics and not Hugh Jackman's picturesque stature and extremely hunky good looks. It's not like that at all. He's not meant to be a sex symbol. It's kind of meant to be a rodent. That's kind of the whole point here. But looking over at the change.org petition, we can see here that as the time of this recording, 9,466 people have signed this, with people coming in very, very rapidly. I mean, just look at the headline of this article here, thousands of fans. When I first clicked on this article, it was over 9,000. Then I clicked on the link to get a screenshot here, and it was 9,400. So by now, it's clearly going to be a lot more. But this is what the guy, Ring Arias, says. The only man able to take the throne after Hugh Jackman. We believe that if Wolverine is to make an appearance in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the only man able to pull it off is Danny DeVito. And going back to look at this image of him right here, yeah, sure, why not, right? Why not have it be Danny DeVito? Why not have it be him? Why not have him just go out and kick some serious ass as Wolverine? Why not? Give us a what if, right? They're doing the what ifs for Disney Plus. Give us the what if for Wolverine as Danny DeVito. Why not? Just whoever animates that, because it's all going to be animated for Disney Plus. Just have it be animated and then have Danny DeVito voice it. And I'm pretty certain fans would lose their collective shit. If you were trying to find, if Disney's looking for a way to keep people coming back to Disney Plus once all the Marvel shows are done, or once their first year is up and they've bought, once that pre-purchase of $70 for the whole year ends up running out, I'm just look. I'm just going to be honest with you guys. I'm just going to be honest here. I would say that probably having Danny DeVito as Wolverine would be a fantastic season 2 what if premiere. Now let's get that petition. Put that on the petition and get that off to Disney, and you have a better shot of it actually happening. The problem with most petitions is that they just never really ever work out ever. And we're going to talk about that here a little bit later, but it's very, very, very true. Now, oh man, Game of Thrones, right? Game of Thrones is definitely over now. It's over. Good or bad, love it or hate it, it's over. But George R.R. Martin is having a little bit of fun trolling people over the Winds of Winter not having come out, right? Trolling people over where the fact that the series deviated from the books a couple seasons ago and left fans arguably upset. So he's come up with a bit of an ultimatum, and this is an actual article here, saying that George R.R. Martin says that we can imprison him if he doesn't finish Winds of Winter by next summer. I mean, obviously it's a bit more of a joke, but there's a little bit of history for that. So one of the reasons why he said this was because Air New Zealand put together a little promo here, right? This little promo here, it's about a minute and a half long, basically trying to entice George R.R. Martin to leave his Arizona home and travel to New Zealand for the quiet, the comfort, the space, and the motivation to finish his series in a very Tolkien-esque setting. It's like, well, if you're looking, fantasy writers love fantasy, and New Zealand's full of fantasy, right? They were really pimping it hard in a little clever ad that appeared, obviously, on their airplanes. But he responds by turning him down. And he says here that I fear that New Zealand would distract me entirely too much. Best leave me here in Westeros for the nonce. He asked them to instead extend the offer to another more cash-strapped authors, saying if you care to fly, say 20 or 30 or 50 of them to Wellington in place of me, I have no doubt they would instantly accept, fall in love with Middle Earth or New Zealand, just as I have. He goes on to say, I tell you this, if I don't have the Winds of Winter in hand when I arrive in New Zealand for Worldcon, you have my formal written permission to imprison me in a small cabin on White Island overlooking that lake of sulfuric acid until I am done. Just so long as the acrid fumes do not screw up my old DOS word processor, I'll be just fine. So, I mean, it's a little bit tongue-in-cheek, obviously, in order to have a little bit of fun with this one. But I think it's funny that here it is all these years later, and Air New Zealand is like, look, dude, we're going to have a little bit of fun, but we're probably pretty serious. Would you get your ass to New Zealand? All right. I mean, like, come out here, chill with Peter Jackson, work on your stuff a little bit, and then put out the goddamn book. because a lot of people want it. I have a feeling that when the book comes out, and the book follows in line with what we saw on the TV series, it's going to be very interesting. Unless George R. R. Martin at this point, because it's been so long, is just like, I'm going to go through and mess with everybody and then just write this entirely different Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood or Full Metal Brotherhood story compared to Full Metal Alchemist. Like, if he does that, that's going to anger so many people, and it's going to be super, super, super funny and be really, 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 really funny to see what happens with it next. So, finally, let's also talk about Game of Thrones, because this is something that's come up, and I do feel that it is worth talking about. Sophie Turner has blasted the disrespectful petition demanding a Season 8 remake. Now, I came out and criticized this petition. I found it to be stupid. I did say it was disrespectful. I thought it was dumb, and I still think it's dumb. The show may not be what you want, but that's really ultimately about it. The show is not just one person or two people, the writers. It is the cast, the crew, the set directors, the visual effects artists, everybody involved, with the exception of whoever the hell does continuity in regards to keeping water bottles and other craft services cups out of the damn frame. You did it twice. You gave them ammo for one. You gave them ammo in that last episode. You gave the people a bits to criticize you over. And maybe that was done on purpose. Maybe they found a take while editing the last episode that they knew they would get that type of controversy to distract people from the ending. It's entirely possible. It's Game of Thrones. Anything can happen, including how it ended with whoever ended up as king. I don't want to spoil it for those who haven't seen it. However, Sophie goes on to say here that, hold on a second. Oh, nope, that's the wrong one. Hold on. Let me see here. Sorry, technical error. There was a screenshot that did not get saved, which is really ridiculous. Yeah, I know. Hold on here. Let me fix that. Let me bring up the program and quickly say, all right. Well, I know. This is great. This is super professional, right? Okay. There we go. Just like that. Fixed it. So this is what the interview with the New York Times has to say. The fan reaction of the season has been much more negative than previous seasons. Were you surprised by some of the vitriol? She says, honestly, I'm not surprised. People have always had an idea in their heads of how they want the show to finish. And so when it doesn't go to their liking, they start speaking up about it and rebel. The thing with Game of Thrones is that it's always been amazing in the fact that there's always been crazy twists and turns right from season 1 with Ned's beheading. So Daenerys becoming something of the Mad Queen, it shouldn't be such a negative thing for fans. It's a shock for sure, but I think it's just because it hasn't gone their way. Finishing up here by saying all of these petitions and things like that, I think it's disrespectful to the cast, the crew, the writers, and the filmmakers who have worked tirelessly over 10 years and for 11 months shooting the last season, like 50-something night shoots. So many people worked on so hard on it, and for people just to rubbish it because it's not what they wanted is just disrespectful. And that's the truth. That is honestly the truth of the situation. And I say this as a person who has worked on films and short films and web series and commercials and has written films and produced films and directed films, who went to film school. This is clearly more than just one person and one entity. And her response in its entire context kind of does point out, I think, a lot of the problems with the backlash to season 8. It was quite a lot of people's own headcanon that got messed up. And a lot of that had to do with, again, the books kind of going a certain way to the TV show running parallel. And then this stopped and this kept going up this direction. And their headcanon got all messed up. And I think that was a big part of it. And a lot of the conversation I've seen online has really flowed around that. But then you also get to a part where the vitriol becomes more of a joke. It becomes more of an over-the-top thing where people, like the late night comedy shows, they'll make fun of little bits, and it takes the conversation away ultimately from the story itself, and it ends up distracting everyone from what was done. Like I said in a video I did talking about how I was completely satisfied with the ending of the show, I went back after watching the series finale once. I watched the behind the scenes, I watched the show again, I watched a bunch of clips again, and I realized that, yeah, this is what they were going for. It may not be how I would have written it, but when I look at it in the whole, from all 8 seasons from beginning to end, I look at it and I go, yeah, this is all right. This is all right. Not everything's going to end the way that we want it to, but it's entirely fine. And I think her response to it is perfectly fine. She worked on the show for 10 years. They shot the Battle of Winterfell over 55 nights in the winter. They shot that one episode. So much went in to the Battle for King's Landing, the Bells episode. To go watch that 40-minute long behind the scenes documentary HBO has on their YouTube channel, and just watch all of the technical work that went into it. And then just to see all of that work absolutely just condensed into, I didn't like what they did with Daenerys. And you're like, oh, come the fuck on, man. Like, come on. This is where I think I differ from a lot of people. Like, I go into a show or a movie or whatever, and I want to like it because I know that it's not just one element. It's not just one aspect. It's a lot of other things in the process. And unfortunately, we don't get that from a lot of critics these days, right? And most critical responses aren't even critical responses. They're just reactions to what they saw, an instant gut reaction to something, or people who don't. And you'd be amazed at how many people I come across that criticize something and ultimately never watch it, right? Or they never really dive into it. They just kind of like, oh, I was on the background, I caught bits and pieces. Critical thinking in regards to these sort of things, I think, is more important now than ever before, because we're inundated with good television. And to reduce something as massive and as culturally significant as Game of Thrones down to just like, oh, it's terrible. Did you see the Rotten Tomato scores? It is terrible. Coming from people who never put any account into Rotten Tomato scores, it just shows you how much is wrong with this scene in regards to actually crafting and curating decent reviews. And that is one of the things that a lot of us need to work on. And I put myself in that cabinet as well. I will watch a movie like Detective Pikachu, and I come home and I'm like trying to think of all my thoughts about it real quick so I can then tell you what I think about Detective Pikachu. That's not really a review. That's me going, hey guys, I saw this thing. Here's my initial thoughts on it. And then if I watch it again down the road and my story changes or my mind changes on it, I'm not going to come back and go, oh, here's another review, because nobody wants that. And that's the problem with content curation and the way we do things on this platform. And I think I really do feel that this is a much larger conversation than simply this just one show and this one petition. And that's where I'm at with it. So